Jacks!
Manning retired.
Which one?
Both.
I like kickers.
Put him on the board. Hausch Mazzoli. Got it. Championship.
What's up, everybody? It's Jason Jarvi, and it's another episode of the Fantasy Nerds. It's episode 3. We're almost back to full capacity here in the luscious Laurel's Park Studios, whatever it is, in Sterling Heights, Michigan.
Beautiful Sterling Heights, Michigan.
We got my brother, Joel Jarvi. He's back.
I'm so happy to be back,
I know,
Jason.
and we're talking fantasy. John Macaroon, the robot, he's over here. He's got all of his phones. He's checking every single Twitter to see all the breaking news, and he'll give us an update if he sees anything. But the main thing is we're going into week 3 of NFL preseason, and it's so close to the beginning of the season. I mean, how excited are you?
It's the sexiest week of the preseason, Jason. I mean, it's when you're going to see starters. You're going to actually see maybe 50%.
Unless you're the Lions.
Yeah, no, unless you're the Lions.
No, if you're the Lions, you don't want to see anybody on the field. Calvin Johnson, he's probably not going to play. And if Matt Stafford only were to play one down, I'd be okay with that because everybody is dropping like flies from ACL injuries.
Yeah, no more ACL injuries. And I'm good with that too, Jason. I don't want to see any more. I don't want to see Calvin. I don't want to see Stafford. I just maybe want to see a little bit of Abdullah, but that's it.
Yeah, the Abdullah with the butter. You want to make sure that he doesn't slip and tear his ACL.
That would be such a Lions thing to do too.
He would probably do something he'd probably celebrate, tear his ACL. I'm not sure if you read a Deadspin article. I just finished reading it on why your team sucks, and it was the Detroit Lions. Did you read it?
I'm a big fan of Drew McGarry. He's a heck of a writer. Deadspin.com. I did read that article, and it made me laugh, and it also made me cry because it's so right on.
It brought up a lot of things that I just kind of put out of my mind, and it made me realize that I have a lot of stored anger for Matt Millen and what he did to this team. I mean, Charles Rogers, Mike Williams, Roy Williams. I'm not going to talk about it for too long because if I talk about it, I'm going to get angry.
No, we could literally spend the next 2 hours lamenting the reign of Matt Millen. Oh man, to think of what this fan base has to go through just with our football team, and then to deal with that guy. And every time I see him on ESPN, rage just fills me.
And it's hard as trying to be an objective Lions fan to not try and bring up the past when you're thinking about the future, because it's really easy to just go, oh, the Lions, they're not going to do good this season because of 50 years of history that, you know, after they have a winning season, make the playoffs, they always bomb the next season. And it's hard to be objective. And I think I hear a lot of that on sports radio talk right now, is that the hosts are trying to be objective, and you see that the Lions, they have a good product, but people still want to dwell in the past, and it's hard not to dwell in the past. And I think you gotta pull yourself out and just focus on the good, really.
Yeah, we're such a beat down fan base. I mean, you're really damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. If you're excited about the upcoming season and optimistic about it, then you're just looking at it and you're eating the cornbread.
You're a Lion Slappy,
you're a Lion Slappy, right? But if all you're doing is the same old Lions and waiting for the other shoe to fall all the time, then you're painted into a corner that way too. So it's tough being a Lions fan, man.
Well, I think that's why we really got into why we're doing this show, fantasy football. It kind of gives us Lions fans a way out of just watching the Lions. We have something else that we can watch on Sunday. So inevitably, when the Lions break your heart in the fourth quarter, you can still root for another team and other players to help you, to give you a sense that, hey, you're winning on some level.
Well, now you're just being a Lions hater, Jason, because maybe they're not going to break your heart in the fourth quarter. Maybe you're going to start Matt Stafford, and this is going to be the week that he's going to get those 300 yards and those 4 tutties, and you're just going to see those points rack up, and your heart is just going to explode with joy.
Well, let's get into some fantasy talk. We're about to get into fantasy football. D-Line Apparel, I see that you already asked this question. I'll get to that a little bit later, but our individual draft is coming up. It's really close. It's Christmas time.
Days away.
I think Christmas Eve, we got our Advent fantasy football calendar.
Mm-hmm.
I open up all the little chocolates, eat them, because draft is almost here.
The stockings are hung by the chimney with care, Jason.
And everybody's waiting to see if Santa Claus is going to come and give you a starting running back or a guy who breaks his leg in the second game.
You've got that big, juicy number 2 pick, too, in our league. Your eyes must be as big as dinner plates right now.
I'm trying not to dwell on it too much, because if I overthink it, then I start to get a little anxiety, because I start thinking about the past, and I think about Sean Alexander and Marshall Faulk and Edgerrin James and everybody else that I've drafted so high, and they've just failed me.
Your fan base is also beaten down. Your fantasy football fan base, the fans are beaten down, man. I feel you.
I'm very much the Lions in fantasy football. I do bad, and then I have a good season, and then I'm right back in I'm not so bad where I'm at the bottom of the league every year. I'm just on the outskirts of making the playoffs.
Would it be easier? Let me ask you something. Would it be easier for you to deal with if you were like the bottom cellar dweller every season and you knew you didn't have a chance and you were out of it? Or would you rather be just like right there all the time, almost making the playoffs, just squeaking in? Which one would be easier or harder for you?
Those are both horrible options.
They're awful, yes. Death not an option.
I guess I'd be still kind of almost there, because if I was at the bottom every single year, I would stop doing it, because it wouldn't be fun, because I'd just be losing. I'd rather rip my heart out every single year and then come back next year.
Yeah, sometimes it hurts, but you know what? There are those weeks where you're just getting hammered and you maybe have one guy going left on Monday night, but it's so far out of reach where you can just sit back and enjoy the football game, just enjoy the Monday night game and know that you got that L and start focusing on next week and making your team better next week.
We got a question from Jason Smith wondering, does fantasy football ruin watching real football for you?
For me, I think I tweeted this into your good buddy Matt Derry had a similar topic a couple weeks ago.
I know he was pretty adamant on not people like enjoying fantasy more than they like just your team.
Yeah, he was railing against the guy that starts AP because he knows that he's playing the Lions and he's going to have a huge game, but he cheers for the Lions in regular life. And I would say when I've been in those situations where I have a guy who's playing the Lions, if I think it's a legitimately good start, I start him, and at some point during the game, usually it's like third quarter, fourth quarter, getting late, I will go and I will make an offering to the fantasy gods, and I will say that I would give up my fantasy win this week if only the Lions could win. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. For me, it doesn't affect me. I like to keep the two separate. I still cheer for my Lions, even when I know it's hurting me in fantasy. But I think that's the only way you can do it.
Yeah, you have to separate the two. You can't go in and if you do have Lions players on your team, like you're fortunate enough to get Calvin Johnson or Matt Stafford, it might ruin your day a little bit, but it's at the end of the day, it is just a game. And you gotta just go in, make the best picks and know that you're trying to win. Yeah,
you have to come from an objective place. You have to look at things objectively. It's not always easy to do as a fan, but as a fantasy football owner and manager, you need to do that for your team. You owe it to your team and your fans of your team.
Yeah, and I mean, you can still pick a AP to go against the Lions and root for the Lions. AP going against the Lions is the smart pick, especially if you don't have anybody else. That's a very good option.
In that situation, I will cheer for AP to bust like a 75-yarder in the first quarter, and then maybe in the second quarter get like a 3-yard gain, something like that, and then go sit down for the rest of the day.
I think it, and that's where I think the balance is. It's very, very close, because that now you're teetering from fantasy guy to a Lions fan, and it's a very close line.
Hey, if you want to be a Lions fan, start a wide receiver. Hope that the Lions go up big, and then the other guy's got to throw to get back in the game. Then you got both your bases covered.
Yeah, but with preseason going, we've had a lot of people question, do we need this long of a preseason? Because we're just seeing guys drop left and right. Kelvin Benjamin, he's done for the year. Jordy Nelson, he's done for the year. I mean, these are number one receivers on their respective teams. And, LaShawn McCoy, he goes out with a hamstring. He's probably going to be back for the first game, but is it going to linger the rest of the season? Just today, Martavis Bryant, he's going to be out for illegal substances, all 4 games pending an appeal. So that doesn't have much to do with injuries, but we need to get through the preseason.
Yeah, fantasy, when you're looking at it from a fan perspective, I feel like they're never going to go away, because it would result in owners giving back money, and owners are never ever going to give back money ever. But from a fantasy perspective, I think this is why it's paramount that you pick a good draft day. It's got to be late in the season, as close to the season as you can possibly get. If you can draft the Wednesday before the Thursday night game, that is your best time to draft, because all the variables of the preseason, which as a fantasy player, you're going to hate variables. All those variables will be gone. You can go in, you can know what's going to happen, and then boom, you got to start the season and with a fresh slate. You don't got to worry about taking Jordy Nelson and now he's done.
Yeah, and until the NFL makes these changes, that's that Labor Day weekend where we always draft Labor Day weekend. It's after the preseason is done, and it's it's a holiday. People are most likely not going to be traveling too much, so draft as late as you can. All these people who have drafted, even before week 1 of the preseason, it's bad news.
Yeah, you're setting yourself up for disaster.
So with drafts coming up, let's look at a couple strategies when you're going into your draft, because you want to be prepared. You don't just want to go in and with a magazine from 2014 or some draft.
That's never happened, Jason. No one's ever drafted with last year's information, right?
Yeah, except in our league. But that was also, I don't know if there's a little user error or some collusion going on. But one thing that you want to look at when you're drafting, do you want to, go for the best player available and try to stock up on key positions like running backs and wide receiver? Because there's a lot of talent in those 2 positions. You can draft multiple of those guys as long as there's no limit, and try to get some hits or misses, try to get lottery tickets for those guys. Or do you go into your draft looking to fill out your starting lineup?
So I think one of my things that I think about fantasy football is that you need to, in order to win, make the playoffs, have a successful season, not only do you need to be tremendously lucky when it comes to health, you need to hit on your first or your second pick. And if you can hit on both, it gives you that much more chance of winning. So I think your question is dependent on where you draft. If you're drafting in the first 5 picks and you've got those lottery tickets, you've got those big name guys like AP, Jamal Charles, maybe you're Andrew Luck, Aaron Rodgers. Those guys are so important that not taking a handcuff and not insuring yourself is kind of dumb. You kind of have to look at those guys' backups, because when those guys go down, their backups got to step up and they got to be on your team. I think if you're drafting later, I think it's safer than to maybe diversify. Look at the talent that's out there. Look at and see what's available. See who you might be able to take a flyer on. I think it also encourages then you to manage your team more during the season. You need to make trades. You need to turn guys into starters.
Fun story. I think it really depends on where you're drafting and it really just how the draft falls to you. This past weekend, I just finished up the Fantasy Sideline Show on 105.1. The doc sends me a text and says, hey, do you have any plans later in the day? And with you and the rest of the family still up north, I'm like, no, I don't have anything left to do the rest of the day. And he says, hey, do you want to draft for me and my wife? And I was like, oh, yeah, sure, why not? And, give me a little bit of practice. So I go there, and his wife ends up getting the second pick, and he ends up getting the 4th pick. And for both of them, I really went with I went just by ADP, which is average draft position, and trying to pick the best player available and to still kind of stay within what they need for their roster. And I kind of really did both. I did both for each team. So for the Docs team, I ended up basically just, getting him the best players available. And, first in the first pick, he got Marshawn Lynch, and he had a keeper of Andrew Luck in the second round. So really the next 8 picks, I got him the best available running backs and wide receivers with, Emmanuel Sanders, Frank Gore, Amari Cooper, Martavis Bryant, Jarvis Landry, and so on. But with his wife's team, she had a keeper later that was at the end of the draft. So with the second pick, Eddie Lacy came around. And then the second round, A.J. Green was there. Then Justin Forsett. And it just happened with the way that the draft fell and that the ADP board was looking, that it just made more sense to get her a full starting lineup than it was to just keep on adding position players. Because also in this league, there was a cap on running backs and wide receivers. So in a different league, I might have just kept on getting her running backs and wide receivers to get her that value. But since there was that cap, I went with giving her the best starting lineup.
It makes a lot of sense. And I think, though, you went through, your strategy was influenced by the keepers, right?
Yes, definitely.
So you had one keeper that was a quarterback, that was a highly coveted quarterback.
Yeah, highly coveted quarterback. And then also, it was in the second round. So I knew that I had the first pick and I wasn't going to get anything until that third round.
Sure. Now, I mean, so which one was the one that you did more of a best player available draft?
That was the Doc with the quarterback.
So the Doc's going to need to, though, he's going to have to manage that team. He's going to have to look through that league. He's going to have to see, who's struggling and take those positions that he's got of power and turn those into starters. One of my things about fantasy football, again, one of the things that I believe is that depth is actually the enemy. That you need to be every week setting your lineup for the best possible lineup for that week. And all that happens when you're in a situation when you have depth is you have question marks. And when it comes down to trusting into your instincts, into your gut, it's tough, like it's almost it's a blessing and a curse to have, like, so who's Luck's backup for that team? Do you know who you got?
Matt Hasselbeck.
Matt, he's still in the league?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
On whose team?
He's on the Colts.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, so you literally handcuffed him.
Oh no, I didn't get them that. No, I believe the backup they got was Marcus Mariota. I thought you were actually asking for
no.
Andrew Luck's legitimate backup.
Okay, no, I meant, well, I'm equally as shocked that Matt Hasselbeck is still in the league.
Which he'd probably go for $50 in a free agent auction budget.
That would never, ever happen, Jason. I don't know why you bring that up. Oh, wait, it did happen in our league, right? That's right. So you got Marcus Mariota and you got Andrew Luck. So I love the Marcus Mariota pick. I'm a sucker for rookies, new guys. I'm a sucker, and I always love to have that stored up. I think I kept Johnny Manziel on my team all season last season, just waiting. Like, at one point, when is he going to break out? When is he going to have that great, that great game, that one great game that I can either then move him into a starting position or turn Manziel into something else? Granted, it didn't happen last season, but I love having that rookie quarterback there. My original point was, if you had, say he has Andrew Luck, and then maybe you get Russell Wilson, you would never ever want to have to pick between those two every single week, because you're never going to make the right pick. You're always going to have to sit there and wonder, and then you're going to be weighing intangibles like, are they playing indoors? Are they playing outdoors? And at that point, you know what? Move Russell Wilson, move the lesser player, whoever you identify that as, and turn that into a starter, and then you don't have to think about it at all.
So overall, what would you say would be the safer way to draft? Would it be going to fill out your lineup, or trying to get as many position players as you can to try and get as many lottery picks as you can?
I think safe way is to fill out your lineup. Look at who you need, fill up and slot in starters. Obviously, keeping with a best player available mentality if you can. You're never going to pass. You're never going to go for the 20th wide receiver and pass on a Rob Gronkowski. So keep that in mind. But at the same, I think it's more fun to take a lottery pick way. And I think if we look back at the history of our league, guys that try to diversify their lineup and then manage their team during the season are the ones that are winning championships and are more likely playing in playoff and meaningful fantasy football games.
But you definitely have to be careful when you're going that route, because it's like it says, it's a lottery ticket. So it's not a for sure thing. If you're a newbie into fantasy football, or you're not as confident as being able to make deals in the middle of the season, then you may want to go with, drafting that starting lineup. I'm not saying that you need to take the Seattle Seahawks in the 4th round, but if you're already filling out your starting lineup and you're trying to decide between, the 40th best wide receiver or the best defense, you may want to look at a defense. You'll probably get some looks at your draft, but you'll know that you'll have, whether the Seattle Seahawks or the Buffalo Bills, you'll have that defense for the entire season. You won't have to worry about that.
Exactly. And it's going to be one less question that you're going to have every week setting your fantasy lineup. You can either just punch the ticket, start the Seahawks, know that that's the team you're going to start every week, or then you have a question like, maybe you draft the Detroit Lions defense because you're a Detroit Lions fan, and maybe it works out for you one week. Or maybe
it's time to stop the Detroit talk. We're getting a little slappy here. Another thing that you kind of touched on a little bit, and it's something you really have to think about in the top part of the draft. When you're drafting, Adrian Peterson, Le'Veon Bell, Eddie Lacy, all those guys, do you look to get the handcuffs of those players? And by that, I mean, are you drafting their backups? When you're drafting Eddie Lacy, are you drafting James Starks? When you're drafting Jamal Charles, are you looking at Niles Davis? Are you looking at it's a necessity to get those handcuffs, or are you trying to diversify? Are you looking at, getting other players and not tying yourself to one specific team?
I think you need to look at how solid is that second back. I mean, if you go out and take Marshawn Lynch early, who's backing up Marshawn Lynch right now?
Robert Turbin or Christian Michael?
Right. Who is it? We don't know, because it's not set. It's not set in stone. If you go out and you get Jamal Charles, who's backing up Jamal Charles?
Niles Davis.
And
he's a definite handcuff. He might even be a flex option on some weeks.
Right. He's a stud. And so you know that in that situation, if you've got Jamal Charles, I'm going to move up a little bit. I'm going to make sure that I get Niles Davis. Now, if you've got Le'Veon Bell, who's backing up Le'Veon Bell?
D'Angelo Williams.
That's a lock. I think I'm going to go get D'Angelo Williams if I have Le'Veon Bell. Conversely, if I know you go out and get Le'Veon Bell, I might target D'Angelo Williams a little early just to kind of mess with you and make sure that I get your handcuff.
You're getting into kind of a different category, because you're almost, who do you have then? If I have Bell and you're looking to get Williams, do you already have your handcuff, or are you going after my handcuff before you're trying to, let's say you have Adrian Peterson. Have you already went out and got Jerick McKinnon, or are you looking to get D Williams before that?
That's a really good question. That's a good question. I think that, again, if it's Adrian Peterson, I'm going to go get his handcuff, just based on history and past and knowing what we all know about Adrian Peterson. I think I'd want his backup. I think I would, if I can still target your handcuff, I'm going to try to do both. But first, if you have AP, you should probably be targeting his handcuff.
So, I mean, really, then what you're saying is handcuff is the way to go.
As an owner?
Yeah. Unless you have the guys who are, like you said, a Marshawn Lynch, where it's not sure who the backup is. But in this situation with AP and Le'Veon Bell, you would say get the handcuff for AP before you try and go snag some guy's handcuff.
Yeah, I think I would have to be a bolder fantasy football player to not feel comfortable having a handcuff. So yes, no, you're right. I would say that for those big name guys that are on your team that are going to be the cornerstone of your team, that are going to really make the difference of you making the playoffs or not making the playoffs. Yes, go out, grab those handcuffs, have that security blanket, feel good about that slot.
And that's what I did in the draft for the doc. His wife, I had Eddie Lacy in the first round, but to kind of dig at the jock a little bit, who had Le'Veon Bell in the first round, I took D'Angelo Williams.
Ooh, how did he take that?
He was not happy because most likely he was going to sit around in that draft until probably the 14th or 15th round.
You got Jock's number.
I know how to poke his buttons.
Nice. Another
question that we got in from Periscope: does the quarterback wide receiver combo, does it work, and how often? It's got to be a case by case basis. I mean, I would have said, going into this draft last week, I would have said my biggest thing that I'd love to try and get would be Aaron Rodgers and Jordy Nelson. I'm not sure if I'm looking really hard to try and go get Aaron Rodgers and Randall Cobb, because I'd probably, one, need to jump up to get Randall Cobb in a place that I wouldn't want to get him. And two, I think Devontae Adams or somebody else. I actually kind of like the Jeff Janis kid. He might be he's a sleeper on that team. But I think there's other options. So I think you really got to take the whole quarterback wide receiver combo case by case, right?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I love the idea of the double dip. I love pairing guys that you think are going to help each other. I love being in a situation where I can start I'll start a wide receiver that my opponent's quarterback is playing. I love stealing points like that. I don't know. I don't have any facts to show that, when you do that, you have X more percentage chances of winning. I love doing that though, because I know that I'm kind of stealing points from you, so when you're watching your quarterback play, all of a sudden he throws a touchdown, your hands go up, but who did he throw the touchdown to? He threw it to my guy. Oh, sorry, buddy. And I love doing that. I think if you're looking for a double dip where you want to focus on, maybe might be quarterback tight end instead. I think that you have it's a bigger boom or bust. When it hits, it's going to hit really hard. But when it doesn't hit, it could hurt you a little bit. But I like that. I like that double dip more than I like a quarterback wide receiver double dip.
Now, what I would say with the quarterback wide receiver combo, you look at the top guys. Let's say you're fortunate to get Aaron Rodgers, Andrew Luck, Peyton Manning. Those guys spread the ball around so much. Drew Brees. If you got Drew Brees, who are you going to get to be that kind of wide receiver combo? Are you getting Brandon Cooks? Is he going to give it to Marcus Colston? And now with Aaron Rodgers, you're not sure who's going to get the bulk of the passes. He's going to spread it around. And Andrew Luck, I think T.Y. Hilton's probably going to have a good year, but there's still Andre Johnson. They got Philip Dorsett, and they got two really good tight ends there. He's going to spread the ball around. You may actually want to look at one of those. If you get one of those, that's those second tier quarterbacks. I think a perfect example is Matt Ryan. I think he's one of those second or third tier quarterbacks who, if you miss out on the big name quarterbacks in the beginning, if you get Matt Ryan, he's a good pair with Julio Jones. And I think that's a little bit more dependable than trying to rely on Aaron Rodgers and Randall Cobb, or Peyton Manning and Emmanuel Sanders for that matter.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think it's interesting. So I just pulled up the top 10 wide receivers by ADP that they're being taken. And I think this is interesting because if you go down the list, I don't know that you'd necessarily want to pair these top 10 guys with their quarterbacks that are thrown to them, I feel like, and also it's going to be tough. You're going to be hard pressed to get Randall Cobb and Aaron Rodgers on your team. So I think it's almost better to start, once you get your quarterback rostered, maybe start looking at those second, third wide receivers that might be coming up and saying, all right, well, I know that I've got Jay Cutler. Let's start looking at, maybe not Alshon Jeffrey, but let's look at, you're making that face.
Horrible reference.
Jay Cutler is the worst. I'm sorry.
I mean, I would conversely say, when like it's hard to get the top quarterback and a top wide receiver. If you're going to draft Aaron Rodgers before Randall Cobb, but you're probably going to have to draft Randall Cobb earlier than he would normally go to get that pairing. So if when you draft those top wide receivers, then you may want to look at those quarterbacks and where that they're going to drop. So like Julio Jones, he's probably within the first 3 rounds he's going to go. Matt Ryan's going to go a little bit later, so you can kind of try and wait on Matt Ryan to get him closer to where his average draft position would be. I mean, even if you want to look at, obviously in our league, everyone's a Lion slappy, so Stafford's going to go earlier than he should. If you get Megatron early, you can wait on trying to get Stafford.
Sure. Yeah, and again, the double dip, when it works, man, it works so good.
We have a specific player question. Matt Forte in a PPR league. Should he be, in that type of offense, is he worthy of a first-round draft pick, or should you be looking at him more in the second round?
I love Forte. I think he's a first-round running back, no doubt. The Chicago offense is, it's going to be good with John Fox, at the head of it. You look what he did for Peyton in the Bronco offense. I'd love to know right off the top of my head how running backs caught the ball in the Broncos offense, but I think you could also make the argument that none of the Bronco running backs have as good a hands as Matt Forte. Matt Forte is not only, Chicago's number 1 running back, but arguably their number 2 or number 1 wide receiver. Let's be real. He's great.
Yeah. And, looking at his ADP, Matt Forte is listed at 9.3. So if you're in a 10 or 12 team league, he really should be drafted in the first round. The guys behind him, you're looking at Dez Bryant, Demaryius Thomas, Luck, Rodgers, CJ Anderson. Those are all pretty good players, but Forte is probably going to give you just as good potential as all those other guys.
Who would you rather have? Would you rather have CJ Anderson or Matt Forte as your number 1 running back?
I might go CJ Anderson.
What?
I was sold on CJ Anderson by Tristan Cockcroft. He kind of talked me and Dennis down off the ledge, because CJ Anderson, it's easy to hate on the guy because he's a Denver Broncos running back, and that's something that probably every Denver fan could tell us, is that whoever their coach is hates their starting running back, because they always seem to go with the next guy available. Last year Monty Ball was supposed to be a top running back, and he's nowhere to be found now. Before that it was Ronnie Hillman. You can just list off the names: Alandis Gary, Mike Anderson, Terrell Davis, all those guys. Tatum Bell. Was Mike Bell on that team too? Did they have both of them?
I think so, yeah, the Bells.
So, I think CJ Anderson, he's going to be interesting. And I would probably go with Anderson over Forte, because Peyton Manning is his quarterback. And he doesn't have Jay Cutler throwing him the ball, because Jay Cutler's horrible.
So you don't see a renewed Jay Cutler under John Fox?
Until I see it, I'm not going to believe it.
That's fair.
Because everybody hates Jay Cutler.
That's fair. Let me ask you a player-specific question, Jason, that I did not prep you for at all. Le'Veon Bell. How high do you take Le'Veon Bell?
I would take him as high as the first pick overall.
Really?
I think he's that good. And you have to be confident with your draft, though, that you're drafting enough guys to be able to get through these first 2 weeks. But I think we had a huge discussion about this on the Fantasy Sideline Show of first pick overall. Is it Adrian Peterson, Jamal Charles, or Le'Veon Bell? And, I argued for AP, and really you can't go wrong with any of those guys. AP and Charles, they're both going to play the full 16 games, heaven forbid an injury.
Or unless you draft them.
Yes, or unless I draft them.
So you should let people know. Just to be fair.
I've let everybody know on pretty much every platform that if I draft a player to stay away from him. But Le'Veon Bell, he's good, and he's in a good offense.
He's so good.
I mean, even without Martavis Bryant, he's probably going to be gone for the first 2 games. But even if it's longer, they still got Antonio Brown. They still got Marcus Wheaton. Ben Roethlisberger is a very good quarterback. It's going to be a good offense. He's not going to have as good a year as last year, but he's still going to be in the top 5 backs at the end of the season.
Yeah, Le'Veon Bell's got that triangle button that I love. Hits the triangle button and boom, he's gone. It's so good.
So, I mean, would you feel comfortable taking Le'Veon Bell with the number 1 pick?
I think I'd have to be very creative with the rest of my draft. I think out of the gate, wins are very important right out of the gate. They can dictate the rest of the season. Getting that first win in week 1 is huge. It puts you in such a position of power when you're looking at trading and setting lineups and free agency and everything like that. Getting that first win out of the gate is really, really important. I'm not saying that if you don't get it, you're not going to make the playoffs, but I am saying that it's so important to win out of the gate. I don't know that I could do it to where I'd feel comfortable. Now, that being said, I love Le'Veon Bell, and I agree with your assessment. I have no problem if someone would take him number 1 overall. I think he's great. I think if you told me I had to sacrifice 2 wins, but then I could have Le'Veon Bell and I could have a better chance at winning for the rest of the season, I think I'd make that bet.
Yeah, so Le'Veon, he's probably not going to go first overall in a lot of leagues because for the fact that between those 3 guys, there's not going to be a whole lot of difference unless somebody goes off and has just a ridiculous year like AP did a couple years ago. But, you're probably going to look at Le'Veon Bell going, 3rd or 4th, maybe even 5th if people decide to jump up and draft quarterbacks. People should be okay with drafting Le'Veon Bell because at most you're going to have to start your, number 3 or 4 running back for 2 weeks, and then you'll have a top running back for the rest of the year. We have a question from Adam Rodricks. He asked us, what are the best rookie wide receivers and handcuffs worth drafting? I know off the top, the best rookie wide receiver to draft right now is Nelson Aguilar from the Philadelphia Eagles.
You love you some Aguilar.
I've said it ever since I saw him in the draft combine that he's going to be the next Odell Beckham Jr. And until he proves me wrong, which he probably will because I'm going to draft him, I think he's going to be good. He's fast. He reminds me of a slightly better Deshaun Jackson.
That's high praise, man.
So, I mean, he's going to be a very good rookie wide receiver. You can probably wait on him a little bit in drafts too. Amari Cooper is also, he's going to be good too, but he's going to command a higher draft pick because people are going to, they're going to need a starting wide receiver, and you're going to have to take him. That's what I ended up taking him in the 5th round in the draft that I did for the doc.
Yeah, I think 5th round probably sounds about right. For the record, I also love me some rookie wide receivers, and every year that I've ever gone out and grabbed rookie wide receivers, they've always done exactly what rookie wide receivers always do, and that's struggle. So really, last year was an aberration. I mean, that's the first time when we've really had rookie wide receivers really come in and be viable fantasy, because what is it? It's the 2nd year or the 3rd year. That's it. It's the 3rd year that you get a wide receiver. That's when they explode. And that's what it's been kind of fantasy commandments all this way. So I think now you have to look at the wide receivers and really do a better job at evaluating them. I really we were talking a little bit beforehand, and I don't love this guy. I didn't love this guy in college. I definitely didn't love where this guy went to college, but I think Devin Funchess could be a solid pick. The Sparty in me just aches saying that, but Cam Newton has something that he hasn't had a wide receiver since Steve Smith, and granted, Steve Smith hasn't been gone that long, but
Calvin Benjamin was a very good compliment to him last year. Yeah. I think he had a really good year, and he would have had a breakout year if he didn't have the horrific injury that he did.
Yeah, well, look at other Panther wide receivers on the roster right now. You got Jericho Cotchery, Philly Brown. I think that's like a sandwich, actually. And
tasty.
Yeah, Brenton Burson. Oh, you got the always reliable Ted Ginn and Greg Olson. I like Greg Olson a lot, but I don't like him enough to not take Devin Funchess.
So on the other hand, handcuffs. Who are you looking at stealing? I think D'Angelo Williams is an obvious one to try and get. He's going to be starting the first 2 games of the season. Can we really call Alfred Blue a handcuff anymore? He's the starting running back. Do we even say Zamir Abdullah? Is he a handcuff for Joik Bell? Or is he just starter number 2?
As fantasy-wise, I think I want to stay away from question marks, and right now those Lions running backs are just all question marks. Granted,
you're a hater, Joel.
I am. But 5 games in, when, Joik Bell's got a touchdown a game, I will sit there and look at him and think, why didn't I draft him? But at the same time, right now, today on August 27th, I don't want anything to do with really Joik Bell or Amir Abdullah if I'm playing for fantasy success.
I think there's 3 running backs that I just happen to see on this sheet that I think are key. Trey Mason and Todd Gurley. I think those guys go hand in hand. I think Trey Mason is going to be a good starter until Todd Gurley gets healthy, and Todd Gurley is going to take over the starting duties, because they wouldn't have spent a 10th round or a 10th overall pick on that guy for nothing. Another one, Cowboys. Joseph Randle, Darren McFadden. They're going to go hand in hand. I really think they're going to ride the hot hand there. If Joseph Randle is good one week, they're going to go with him. If Darren McFadden is good one week, they're going to go with him. Neither of those are really good options. The one that I think will be really interesting is Ryan Matthews in Philadelphia. He's a guy when he was on the Chargers, it's kind of like Jay Cutler. I feel like he let down a lot of people, but I think he's going to be in a good offense, and it'll be interesting to see, can DeMarco Murray produce at the same rate that he did in Dallas, and can he actually stay healthy?
Sure, yeah. Let me throw out another name for you. We're all talking about San Diego Chargers. How about Mr. Danny Woodhead?
I think Danny Woodhead, he's very underrated, especially in PPR leagues.
Very underrated. He's got that Darren Sproles factor that, catches the ball, runs the ball, he touches the ball, he gets touchdowns. I would love to have Danny Woodhead, at the appropriate time in the draft to kind of lock up.
We got another question from another fan of the show, Laura Bagley. She wants our idea on Amir Abdullah. She has him on 2 of our teams, unfortunately. Or fortunately, I don't know. I mean, I love the butter, and I love me some Amir Abdullah. But, what do you think? Is he going to be able to be a solid running back 2 or a flex play all year? Or is he going to have the fumbling issues, and is he going to not be worthy of a high pick that he's probably commanding right now?
Right now, he's probably not worth where you're drafting him. That being said, the Lions fan in me loves throwing Lions players out there and then cheering for them. That's why I missed the show. I was at the Lions preseason game, the very first one against the Jets.
You're a sick individual.
I'm so sick. But that first quarter and a half of Lions football, I tried not to get too excited, but they answered so many questions that people have had all season long. One of those was Amir Abdullah. How's he going to be? What's he going to look like? Being a Lions fan, we've seen a lot of running backs that have no business being in the NFL. And
you know who our leading running back is since Barry Sanders left?
I do. I read that article too.
Kevin Jones.
That's
awful.
Ugh.
But
Coletto.
Oh man, Amir Abdullah. His average, his ADP he's likely going in the 7th round. There's one site that has him going in the 4th, as high as the 4th round. I think that's a little crazy. 7th round is where you should really be looking at him. I wouldn't reach on him. If you are hurting for running backs, that's another thing. If you're trying to decide between Chris Ivory, Isaiah Crowell, Tevin Coleman, and Amir Abdullah, you may want to take Amir Abdullah because I think he has a very high upside. He's gonna be involved in the passing game, and as what we've seen in preseason, it is very promising. He's able to make cuts, he's able to make guys miss, and time will only tell.
Yeah. So I'm looking at an ADP site, and the 2 running backs above Amir Abdullah right now, TJ Yeldon from Jacksonville, yuck. You don't want TJ Yeldon.
I want Denard Robinson
Yeah, you don't want TJ Yeldon.
or Storm Johnson. Is he still on the team?
Storm Johnson, that's definitely a weatherman's name. And Rashad Jennings. I think I would rather have Rashad Jennings than Amir Abdullah. New York
I
Giant
don't
running
know.
back. They love their running backs there.
He gets hurt.
That's true.
And they have Shane Vereen. I think
Ooh.
Shane Vereen is going to be the passing guy there. Rashad Jennings is going to he'll definitely be the rusher, but Amir Abdullah might be a better option.
Okay, so there you go. So then the two below Amir Abdullah by ADP, Joik,
Essentially a handcuff.
right? Or LeGarrette Blount.
Bill Belichick hates his running backs.
He hates you, Jason.
He hates everybody.
Fantasy players. He hates you.
He hates footballs. He hates Spygate. He hates everything.
Yes.
But he loves winning Super Bowls. LeGarrette Blount, I think Jonas Gray is the guy I would wait on LeGarrette Blount and try to get Jonas Gray. I think he's going to be the main guy in that city by the end of the season, really.
Yeah. So I think if you're looking two above, two below, I think I'd like to have Amir Abdullah, quite honestly.
And we're just sick individuals for saying that, but it's our opinion.
Yeah,
you can hate us for that if you want.
we love the beatdown.
To kind of finish up this, we kind of went over everything that we kind of wanted to talk about. Number one overall, between AP, Jamal Charles, Le'Veon Bell, Eddie Lacy, who would you want to have? Gun to your head, you got to pick one of those guys. Who would you take?
Give me Adrian Peterson right now.
And I'd say that too, because he's a cyborg.
Yes, he's not human.
He just runs the ball. He just gets touchdowns. I think he automatically gives you 1,300 yards and 10 touchdowns.
Yeah.
I think all those other guys have the possibility to get well above AP. I just think AP is going to be that consistent factor. The guy that I might actually look at after that would be Eddie Lacy, because I think with Jordy Nelson gone, Aaron Rodgers is still going to spread the ball around, but Eddie Lacy is going to be kind of just that solid force on Green Bay.
Eddie Lacy scares me a little bit. Something about Green Bay running backs, I don't know. They scare me a little bit. But
they haven't had one since Dorsey Levens. Oh, no, Amon Green.
yeah, I'm on Batman.
Yeah, I had that guy before.
Yeah,
Or Najee Davenport.
the midnight pooper. Yes, Najee Davenport. No, I say take AP and give me a call in week 13 when you're in the playoffs. AP gives you such a wide range to make mistakes that I don't know how you can make. The only way you're going to draft AP for number one overall or have AP as your first pick and not make the playoffs is if he gets suspended again this year. That's it.
Yeah, or if you draft horribly the rest of the way, or you trade away AP, or if I draft Adrian Peterson.
Oh yeah, well that's a given. If you draft AP, then everything I just said's off the board.
Yeah. So kind of to wrap this up, let's go away from players. Let's talk a little bit about team names. It's kind of an underrated thing. I see a lot of leagues, they kind of do their own thing. Mm-hmm. But our league, we've kind of switched it up. We had, for the longest time, we had the guys, we had No Ma'am and the Dread Pirate Roberts, where they were institutions in the league. And then we had other guys who switched it up every year. So first off, what do you think? Do you think should teams stick with a team name and just kind of develop that brand? Or are you kind of a guy who looks at switching it up every year, trying to get something new going and whatever you think is funniest?
I like what our league does. I like what we've started doing the last 2 years, and that's whoever wins the championship gets to pick the theme for people to choose their team name for this year. I think it allows people to assume new identities. I think if you have a team that you've been at for a long time and you're not winning, it allows you to shed that identity. I think it's a lot of fun too. Last year we all did the great John Hughes movie, Great Outdoors. Everybody picked a name based on that movie. It's a great movie. This year we're doing minor league baseball teams for our fantasy team names. I think it's a great way. I think it brings the league together, forces guys to be a little creative and put a little thought into things.
Yeah, and it's just a way to really make your league a little bit more interesting, and it gives another aspect. It's like having punishments for guys. If you're a team that makes the guy who finishes last have a little license plate. A license plate
cover.
a license plate cover that says "I suck at fantasy football." It's something like that it adds something new. The winner gets to pick the theme. You don't want to have a stale league. You don't want to do something for 10 years just and have it be the same.
Yeah, that's how people get bored. Well, how do you feel about team names that are puns, like somewhere over the Dwayne Bowe?
I think that's for all the new fantasy football people, and that's all the people. That's people who join online leagues and they don't know anybody on that league.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of puns for team names. I think it's kind of tired, kind of old, and I don't know, not very creative to me. But then again, we're picking minor league baseball teams, so I don't know what that says about us.
No, I think minor league. You got to explain a little bit more about minor league baseball teams, because I think it was between Star Wars, something else, and minor league baseball teams.
Ghostbusters.
Yeah, minor league baseball teams, on top of having just a wealth of already established team names out there, you already have logos, and we get together for draft. You can sport gear. I ordered my Tennessee Smokies hat. I love it. It's awesome. I've gotten a lot of compliments on it. They're like, "Hey, what's that hat?" I'm like, "It's the Smokies. It's my fantasy team."
I was really surprised. I didn't think that guys would latch on as much as they have. I'm really surprised at the number of guys that have gone out and bought gear for their fantasy football team. I think that's cool. I think that shows some spirit and some enthusiasm for the coming season.
In the end, yeah, you got to do just what's right for your team, for your league. If guys want to keep the same name, make sure that it's not stale, because it just like a regular relationship, as the doc would probably tell you, you don't want to have a stale relationship. You want to keep things fresh.
Keep it spicy. So
I think that'll do it for episode 3 of the Fantasy Nerds. We look forward to coming back. Next week will be the 4th week of the preseason, another week closer to actual games starting and actual football meaning something. And we'll actually be able to give you some predictions.
Yeah, hopefully some ACLs stay intact.
Yeah, let's pray something. Let's say a prayer to the fantasy gods that Amir Abdullah and Matt Stafford and Calvin Johnson are able to keep their ACLs connected to their legs.
Amen, brother.
So with that, I'm Jason Jarvi.
I'm Joel Jarvi.
And we'll see you next week.